Most people have seen a 1964 penny before. But what if I told you that one version of this everyday coin has quietly become one of the most misunderstood and searched for Lincoln cents in America, and that some collectors are willing to pay serious money for the right example? Today, we're uncovering the real story behind the 1964 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny. This coin looks ordinary at first glance. A small brown cent, Abraham Lincoln on the front, wheat stalks or memorial design on the back, depending on the year. But the 1964 D penny has a story that connects to one of the most chaotic moments in modern U.S. coin history, a time when Americans were hoarding coins, minting machines were running non-stop, and rumors of rare pennies were spreading across the country. Let's start with what this coin actually is. The 1964 D Lincoln penny was struck at the Denver Mint, which is why it carries a small D mint mark just below the date on the front of the coin. It's part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. By 1964, the Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for more than half a century and had become one of the most recognizable coins in the world. On the front, you see Lincoln's profile facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, Liberty behind him, and the date along the lower edge. Below the date is that small but important letter D, marking it as a Denver Mint coin. On the back, you see the Lincoln Memorial, which replaced the wheat stalk design in 1959. Above the memorial are the words United States of America, and below it, 1 cent, with the motto E pluribus unum across the top. Now let's rewind to the year 1964. The early 1960s were a strange time for American coins. Rising silver prices had made many circulating coins worth more as metal than as money. People started pulling silver dimes, quarters, and half dollars out of circulation and saving them. This caused a nationwide coin shortage. Vending machines ran out of change. Banks struggled to keep coins in stock. Everyday purchases became harder, not because of inflation, but because people simply couldn't find enough coins. Although pennies weren't made of silver, they were affected by the same panic. People started hoarding cents too, believing that copper prices would rise and that older pennies might become valuable. This forced the U.S. Mint into overdrive. In 1964 alone, the Denver Mint struck over 3.7 billion Lincoln cents, one of the highest production totals for any single year in U.S. history. The Philadelphia Mint struck billions more. The goal was simple: flood the economy with coins so people would stop hoarding them. Ironically, this massive production is part of what makes the 1964 D penny so fascinating today. On paper, it's extremely common. But within those billions of coins are rare variations, unusual errors, and exceptional condition examples that collectors now search for relentlessly. Let's talk about what makes this penny physically unique. The 1964 D Lincoln cent is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin, the classic bronze composition used for pennies from 1909 until 1982. It weighs about 3.11 grams and measures 19 millimeters in diameter. When new, these coins had a bright reddish color that gradually darkened to brown as they circulated. Coins from this era are often divided into 3 color categories by collectors. Red coins still retain much of their original mint luster. Red-brown coins show a mix of original red and darker toning. Brown coins have mostly lost their red color and appear chocolate or dark copper. This color difference matters a lot when it comes to value. Design-wise, the 1964 D penny carries the Lincoln Memorial reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo. It was the first circulating U.S. coin to feature a building that also showed a real person inside the structure. If you look closely, you can see Lincoln's seated statue inside the memorial. Now, here's where things get interesting. Even though billions of these pennies were made, very few survive today in truly perfect condition. Most were heavily circulated. They were tossed into jars, dropped on sidewalks, scraped by vending machines, and passed through countless hands. Finding one today with full mint luster, no major marks, and sharp details is far more difficult than the original mintage numbers suggest. But condition alone isn't the whole story. Some 1964 D pennies were struck with minting errors, and in the world of coin collecting, errors can turn ordinary coins into extraordinary finds. These include off-center strikes, where the design is shifted toward one edge; doubled dies where parts of the lettering or date appear doubled; clipped planchets where a piece of the coin blank is missing; and weak strikes where certain design elements didn't fully form. One of the most searched-for varieties is the 1964 double die obverse penny. On some examples, the date or lettering appears slightly doubled, especially under magnification. While true double dies from this year are rare, verified examples can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on condition. Another collectible variety involves repunched mint marks. In earlier decades, mint marks were punched into coin dies by hand, and sometimes the punch was misaligned and corrected. While less dramatic than doubled dies, repunched mint marks are popular with collectors who specialize in varieties. But perhaps the biggest reason the 1964 D penny gets so much attention today is because of a long-standing myth. For decades, rumors have circulated that special 1964 pennies were secretly struck in different metals or experimental compositions, including aluminum, steel, or even silver, during the U.S. Mint's transition planning away from copper. While no confirmed aluminum 1964 cents were released into circulation, these rumors have fueled collector interest and public curiosity for years. Every time someone finds an unusually light or oddly colored 1964 penny, excitement spreads online. In most cases, these unusual coins turn out to be plated, altered, or damaged by heat or chemicals. But the legend itself has helped cement the 1964 penny as one of the most talked-about Lincoln cents of the modern era. So, is the 1964 D penny actually valuable? In average circulated condition, most examples are worth about 1 to 3 cents, essentially face value, sometimes slightly more for their copper content. But once you move into higher grades, the story changes. Uncirculated 1964 D pennies with strong mint luster can sell for several dollars. Coins graded mint state 65 red by professional grading services often sell in the $10 to $25 range. Higher-end examples graded MS66 red can sell for $40 to $75. And top population coins graded MS67 red or better have sold at auction for several $100s, especially when demand is strong and supply is low. Era coins bring even more dramatic prices. A strong double die 1964 D penny in high grade can sell for $500 to $2,000 or more. Major off-center strikes or dramatic mint errors can also reach hundreds of dollars depending on eye appeal and rarity. One auction example that caught collector attention was a 1964 D Lincoln cent graded MS67 red by PCGS that sold for over $400, despite being a normal strike with no errors. The reason? Its exceptional preservation and near-perfect surfaces made it one of the finest examples known. Another example involved a 1964 D penny with a dramatic off-center strike that still showed a full date and mint mark. That coin sold for more than $300 because collectors love errors that clearly show how the minting process went wrong. Now let's talk about how to identify a real 1964 D penny and how to avoid fakes or altered coins. First, check the date and mint mark. A genuine 1964 D penny should have a small D below the date on the front of the coin. The letter should look clean, properly shaped, and centered. If it looks oddly placed, too thick, too thin, or out of alignment, it may have been added later. Second, check the weight. A genuine bronze 1964 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. A digital scale that reads to 2 decimal places can help confirm this. If the coin is much lighter or heavier, it may have been altered or struck on the wrong type of blank. Third, use a magnet. A real 1964 penny should not stick to a magnet. If it does, it's likely plated steel or another altered material, not an authentic mint product. Fourth, look closely at the surface. Authentic coins show natural wear patterns and toning. Artificially altered coins often show bubbling, strange textures, or uneven coloring. Plated coins may appear unusually shiny or have peeling edges. And finally, for any coin you believe may be valuable, professional grading is the safest option. Third-party grading services like PCGS or NGC can authenticate, grade, and encapsulate the coin, making it easier to sell and protecting it from damage. Now for some surprising facts about the 1964 penny. Even though the U.S. Mint produced billions of pennies that year, many collectors believe far fewer high-grade examples survived than expected. That's because 1964 coins were used heavily and rarely saved in mint condition. People didn't see them as special at the time. They were just change. Another interesting detail is that 1964 was the last year the U.S. Mint used mint marks consistently on circulating coins until 1968. From 1965 through 1967, mint marks were removed entirely to discourage coin collecting during the shortage. That makes 1964 one of the final, classic mint mark, years before that unusual break in tradition. It's also one of the last years before the Lincoln cents metal composition became controversial. Rising copper prices in the late 1960s and early 1970s eventually forced the mint to abandon bronze cents altogether, leading to the copper-plated zinc pennies we use today. Many collectors prefer the older copper cents for their weight, color, and solid feel, and the 1964 penny represents the end of that era in many ways. So why do collectors love the 1964 D-penny? Part of it is nostalgia. Millions of Americans grew up in the 1960s, handling these coins every day. For many people, this penny represents childhood, simpler times, and everyday moments that now feel distant. Part of it is accessibility. Unlike rare gold coins or early silver dollars, the 1964 D-penny is something almost anyone might find in a jar, drawer, or inherited collection. That sense of possibility, that treasure might already be in your home, is powerful. And part of it is the hunt. Because high-grade examples and genuine error coins are scarce, collectors enjoy searching rolls, collections, and dealer inventories for overlooked gems. Every 1964 D-penny holds the potential, however small, of being something special. But perhaps the biggest reason this coin continues to fascinate people is that it sits at the crossroads of history and everyday life. It was minted during one of the most turbulent periods in American coinage, at a time when the public's relationship with money itself was changing. Yet it was also just a penny, passed from hand to hand, dropped into pockets, and spent without a second thought. And that's what makes it remarkable. Today, a single 1964 D-penny in average condition might only be worth a cent or two. But the right one, perfectly preserved, beautifully toned, or struck with a rare error, can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. More importantly, it carries a story of American history, industry, and culture that goes far beyond its tiny size. So if you ever come across a 1964 penny with a small D beneath the date, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check the condition. Look for unusual features, because hidden among billions of ordinary coins are a few extraordinary ones, and the next great discovery could be sitting quietly in your pocket, waiting to be noticed. And that's the real magic of coin collecting. Every coin has a story. Some are loud, some are quiet. But every once in a while, even the most ordinary-looking penny turns out to hold something truly special. What if the most ordinary penny in your pocket turned out to be hiding a story most people never hear? And in rare cases, real money value. Today, we're uncovering one of the most misunderstood coins in American history. The 1968 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, this coin looks completely normal. It's copper-colored, small, and easy to overlook. But behind this simple design is a fascinating story of change, transition, and quiet rarity that collectors still search for today. Whether you're a coin collector, someone who inherited old coins, or just curious about what might be hiding in your spare change jar, this penny deserves your attention. Let's start with what this coin actually is. The 1968 no-mint mark Lincoln penny was made by the United States Mint during a major turning point in American coin production. If a penny from this year has no mint mark, it means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. That may sound ordinary, but this specific year marks the return of mint marks after a long pause. And that detail alone makes 1968 a historically important date in U.S. coinage. From 1965 through 1967, the U.S. Mint removed mint marks from all coins to discourage hoarding during a national coin shortage. People were saving coins, thinking silver content and scarcity might make them valuable, which caused circulation problems. To solve this, the Mint temporarily stopped using mint marks entirely. Then in 1968, mint marks came back, but Philadelphia continued its tradition of not using one. So while Denver coins from that year show a D and San Francisco coins show an S, Philadelphia pennies remained blank. That's why the 1968 no-mint mark penny stands at a crossroads between two major eras of American coin history. Now let's talk about the world this penny was born into. The year 1968 was filled with change and uncertainty in the United States. It was a time of social movements, political tension, and cultural shifts. The Vietnam War was ongoing. Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy were assassinated that year. America was questioning itself, redefining itself, and stepping into a new age. Meanwhile, everyday Americans were still using coins constantly. Cash ruled daily life. Pennies were everywhere: grocery counters, parking meters, school lunch lines, and piggy banks. The Lincoln penny, which had first appeared in 1909, had become one of the most recognizable coins in the country. And in 1968, that familiar penny was still made mostly from copper, long before modern pennies switched to cheaper metals. Let's take a closer look at the design. On the front of the coin, or obverse, you see the profile of Abraham Lincoln, facing right. This portrait was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner and has appeared on the penny since 1909, making it the longest-running portrait of a real person on U.S. coinage. Above Lincoln's head are the words "In God We Trust." To the left is the word "Liberty." And to the right is the date, 1968. On no mint mark coins, that date is all you'll see. There is no letter beneath it. On the reverse side, you'll see two wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. Above that is the phrase EPLURIBUSUNUM, meaning out of many, one. This wheat design had been used since 1909 and would continue until 1958. But wait, here's where things get interesting. Actually, the wheat design ended in 1958, and starting in 1959, the Lincoln Memorial replaced it. So the 1968 penny features the Lincoln Memorial reverse, a building so detailed that, if you look closely, you can see Lincoln's statue seated inside. So the full design is Lincoln's portrait on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back, a powerful tribute to the president who preserved the Union. Now let's talk about the metal. The 1968 penny is made primarily of copper, about 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. That's important because just a few years later, rising copper prices forced the mint to switch to copper-plated zinc pennies, which feel lighter and sound different when dropped. Many collectors prefer these older solid copper pennies because they feel heavier, richer, and more substantial. And for some people, that alone makes them more appealing to collect. So if millions of these coins were made, why does anyone care about a 1968 no-mint mark penny? The answer lies in condition, errors, and rarity within normal circulation. First, condition matters more than most people realize. Most 1968 pennies were heavily used. They were dropped, scraped, bent, and worn down. Today, finding one in average circulated condition is easy, but finding one in pristine, uncirculated, or mint-state condition is much harder. Coins that look brand new, with sharp details, no discoloration, and full original luster can sell for significantly more than face value, especially when professionally graded by coin grading services. But condition alone isn't the whole story. Some 1968 no-mint mark pennies contain minting errors, and that's where things get exciting. Errors happen when something goes wrong during the striking process. Sometimes the die is damaged. Sometimes the coin is struck off-center. Sometimes letters double. Sometimes the metal planchet is flawed. And when these mistakes slip into circulation, they become collectibles. One of the most sought-after errors on Lincoln pennies is a doubled die, where the lettering or date appears doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process. On certain 1968 pennies, collectors have discovered doubling on the date the word "Liberty" or "In God We Trust." These are not scratches, they're not damage. They're actual mint errors, and they can multiply a penny's value dramatically. Another type of error is the off-center strike, where the coin's design is shifted toward one side, leaving part of the blank metal visible. The more dramatic the shift, the more valuable the coin can be, especially if the date is still visible. There are also clipped planchets, where part of the coin is missing because the metal blank wasn't cut properly before striking. And there are die cracks and die breaks, which leave raised lines or blobs of metal on the coin's surface. Each of these errors turns an ordinary penny into something unique, a one-of-a-kind piece of mint history. Now let's talk about real-world values. In average circulated condition, a normal 1968 no-mint mark penny is usually worth between 2 and 5 cents. That's not exciting, but that's not the end of the story. In uncirculated condition, especially with strong red color and no wear, values rise significantly. Certified mint-state examples have sold for anywhere from $10 to over $100, depending on grade. But error coins and high-grade specimens can go much higher. Some professionally graded 1968 no-mint mark pennies in near-perfect condition have sold at auction for several $100s. Rare error versions, especially strong doubled dies or dramatic off-center strikes, have sold for even more. In collector auctions, rare error examples have reached prices in the high hundreds and, in exceptional cases, over $1,000, all from a coin that once bought nothing more than a piece of candy. But how do you know if your coin is real or if it's special? Let's talk about identification. First, look at the date. It must clearly read 1968. Next, check for a mint mark below the date. If there's no letter at all, it was struck in Philadelphia. Then examine the coin under good lighting and, if possible, with a magnifying glass. Look closely at the date, the word Liberty, and the phrase "In God we trust." If you see doubling, not shadowing or damage, but real doubled impressions, that could indicate a doubled die. Next, look at the edges. Are they clean and smooth? Does the coin look unusually thick, thin, clipped, or uneven? These could signal planchet errors. Check the strike alignment. Is the design centered? If it's noticeably shifted but still readable, that could be valuable. Also pay attention to the surface. Original copper pennies have a natural reddish-brown tone. Artificial cleaning often leaves coins overly shiny or scratched, which lowers value. And finally, weight matters. A genuine 1968 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If it's much lighter or heavier, it could be damaged, altered, or fake. Speaking of fakes, yes, even pennies can be counterfeited. Some altered coins are created by changing dates on similar year pennies to mimic rare varieties. Others involve adding or removing mint marks. The best protection is knowledge, and if you think you found something special, professional authentication is always worth considering. Now let's move into some fun and surprising facts about the 1968 penny. Did you know that the Lincoln Memorial on the back of the penny was the first U.S. coin design to feature a real building? And inside that building is the tiny seated statue of Lincoln, making him the only U.S. president to appear twice on the same coin. Another fun fact, because the 1968 penny is made mostly of copper, its metal value alone can exceed 1 cent when copper prices rise. Although melting coins is illegal in the U.S., so they can't be sold for scrap. Also, during the late 1960s, millions of Americans were storing coins in jars and drawers because of earlier silver shortages. That means many high-quality 1968 pennies survived untouched, but only a small percentage remain in true mint condition today. And here's something surprising. Some collectors focus on specific years not because they're rare overall, but because they represent turning points. And 1968 is exactly that, the year mint marks returned, ending a 3-year experiment in anonymous coinage. So why do collectors love the 1968 no-mint mark penny today? First, it's accessible. You don't need thousands of dollars to start searching for one. You can find them in old jars, inherited collections, and even circulation. Second, it's historical. This coin connects to a fascinating era in American history, socially, politically, and monetarily. It reflects how the U.S. Mint responded to economic pressure and public behavior. Third, it offers the thrill of the hunt. Most are common, but just a few, carry errors, exceptional condition, or unusual features that turn them into valuable collectibles. That possibility keeps collectors checking every penny they find. And finally, it's a reminder that treasure doesn't always look like treasure at first glance. Sometimes it looks like pocket change. Now imagine this. Someone empties a jar of coins onto their kitchen table. They're sorting quarters, nickels, dimes, and then come the pennies. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, most get ignored. But one catches their eye. No mint mark, sharp details. Strong copper color. Under magnification, something looks different. Maybe the date looks doubled. Maybe the strike looks off-center. Maybe the surface looks untouched after more than half a century. That moment when someone realizes an ordinary coin might not be ordinary at all is what collecting is all about. It's not just about money. It's about discovery. It's about history. It's about holding a small piece of the past in your hand and realizing it still has something to say. So the next time you see a penny, don't dismiss it. Turn it over. Look at the date. Look for the mint mark or the absence of one. Check the details. You never know what story it might carry. The 1968 no-mint mark Lincoln penny isn't famous like the 1909's VDB or legendary like the 1943 copper penny. But it occupies a unique place in American coin history, a quiet witness to change, transition, and continuity. And sometimes the quiet coins are the ones with the best stories. So if you have a handful of old pennies at home, take another look. That unassuming copper coin might not just be spare change. It might be history, and in rare cases, it might be something much more. Thanks for listening and happy hunting. Most people walk right past this coin every single day, not knowing that some 1976 Lincoln pennies with a small d under the date have quietly become some of the most searched modern coins in America. And what makes it even more surprising is that many of them are still sitting in jars, drawers, and old collections right now. Today, we're uncovering the true story of the 1976 D-Mint Mark Lincoln penny, where it came from, what makes it special, how much some examples are actually worth, and why collectors still hunt for it nearly 50 years later. The 1976 D. Lincoln penny was struck in Denver, Colorado, during one of the most important years in American history. That year marked the 200th anniversary of the United States, the bicentennial. While quarters, half dollars, and dollars received special patriotic designs in 1976, the penny remained unchanged. But behind the scenes, something major was happening at the U.S. Mint. America was still recovering from rising metal costs, inflation, and changes in coin production. The Lincoln cent had already shifted from copper to copper-plated zinc just 4 years earlier, in 1973. By 1976, the Mint was fine-tuning this new composition, improving striking quality, and producing massive quantities of coins to meet everyday demand. That makes the 1976 penny one of the most widely circulated coins of the modern era, but also one of the most misunderstood. This coin features Abraham Lincoln on the front, based on the famous sculpture by Victor David Brenner. Lincoln faces right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1976 on the right. Beneath the date is a small D, showing it was struck at the Denver Mint. On the back, the coin shows the Lincoln Memorial, which was used on pennies from 1959 through 2008. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, one of the smallest but most detailed designs in U.S. coin history. The metal composition is 97.5% zinc with a thin copper coating. This change made pennies cheaper to produce, but also more fragile. Unlike older solid copper cents, zinc pennies can corrode, bubble, and lose their copper layer over time, which means high-quality examples from the 1970s are becoming harder to find each year. Now here's where things get interesting. The Denver Mint produced over 4.2 billion pennies in 1976. That sounds like an impossible number, and it is, which is why most people assume the coin has no value at all. But in coin collecting, rarity isn't just about how many were made. It's about how many survived in exceptional condition and whether any mistakes or unusual features occurred during production. And in 1976, several things happened that turned ordinary pennies into highly desirable collector pieces. First, there are high-grade mint state examples. These are coins that were never used in circulation, never scratched, never worn down, and never damaged by moisture or corrosion. Because zinc cents degrade easily, finding a perfect 1976 D penny today is much harder than finding a worn one. In top certified condition, some of these coins have sold for hundreds, and in rare cases over $1,000, depending on strike quality, luster, and surface preservation. But the real excitement comes from errors. One of the most valuable 1976 D pennies is the double die variety. This happens when the coin's design is accidentally struck twice at slightly different angles during production. The result is doubling on letters, numbers, or design features. On some 1976 D cents, collectors have found doubling in the date, the word Liberty, and even Lincoln's profile. These coins often look normal at first glance, but under magnification, the doubling becomes clear. And when verified by professional grading services, they can sell for several $100s or more. Another valuable error is the off-center strike. This occurs when the coin blank is not properly aligned during striking, causing part of the design to be missing and part of the blank to remain blank. Depending on how dramatic the misalignment is, off-center 1976 D pennies have sold for anywhere from $50 to several $100s. There are also clipped planchet errors, where part of the coin's edge is missing due to a cutting mistake during production. These coins are especially popular because the missing section is clearly visible, making them easy to recognize. And then there are wrong metal strikes. extremely rare cases where a penny was accidentally struck on a foreign coin blank or another denomination's metal disc. While confirmed examples of this from 1976D are rare, similar era errors have sold for thousands, making collectors closely examine every unusual coin they find. Now let's talk real numbers. In circulated condition, most 1976D pennies are worth face value, 1 cent. But uncirculated examples can range from 10 to 50 cents, depending on luster and surface quality. Mint state coins graded MS65 or higher often sell between $5 and $20. Coins graded MS67 or better can reach $100 to $400. And the highest graded examples ever certified have sold for over $1,000 at auction, not because the date is rare, but because perfection is rare. One particularly sharp 1976D penny graded MS68 sold for over $1,600, simply because it was one of the finest known examples of the coin. Double die varieties have sold between $200 and $1,000, depending on strength of doubling and condition. Off-center errors commonly sell between $50 and $300. Clipped planchets usually range from $40 to $150. And dramatic mint errors, especially combined errors, can exceed $1,000 if confirmed and certified. So how do you know if your 1976D penny is real, valuable, or just ordinary? Start with the date. It should read 1976 with a small d below it. Next, look at the weight. A standard 1976 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it's significantly heavier or lighter, it may be an error or altered coin. Then check the surface. Genuine mint errors have smooth, natural metal flow and clean edges. Fakes often show tool marks, scratches, or unnatural shapes. Look closely at the lettering. If you see doubling, compare it to verified examples online. True doubled dies show rounded, separated letters, not blurry shadows. If the coin looks unusually sharp, bright, or flawless, it could be a high-grade mint state piece. These are worth sending to a professional grading service if the condition looks exceptional. Never clean a coin. Cleaning destroys its surface and can reduce its value by more than half, even if it's rare. Now let's explore some surprising facts about the 1976D penny. Even though billions were minted, far fewer exist today in pristine condition than in the 1950s or 1960s. That's because zinc corrodes faster, especially in humid environments. Many stored pennies have developed bubbles under the copper plating or dark stains that permanently reduce their grade. Another fascinating detail is that 1976 pennies were minted during a time when Americans were saving coins heavily for bicentennial souvenirs. People stored rolls of quarters and half dollars, but few saved pennies. That means fewer untouched penny rolls survived, making high-grade examples scarcer than people realize. Also, the Denver Mint was pushing production limits in 1976 to meet demand, increasing the chance of mechanical errors slipping through quality control, which is why this year has more recognized error varieties than many surrounding dates. And here's something most people don't know. Some 1976D pennies were struck with unusually strong strikes, giving Lincoln's face extra detail and sharper memorial steps on the reverse. These coins are especially desirable to collectors who specialize in high-quality strikes. Collectors today love the 1976D penny not because it's ancient or made of silver, but because it represents a turning point in modern American coinage. It comes from the early zinc era during a major historical year, and it offers real opportunities for discovery. Unlike ultra-rare coins locked away in museums or private vaults, this coin is still out there. It's still showing up in pocket change, inherited collections, bank rolls, and old jars in closets. That sense of possibility is what keeps collectors searching. It's also a favorite among beginners because it teaches something important. Value isn't just about age. It's about condition, rarity within a population, and mistakes that turn ordinary objects into historical anomalies. One collector in Texas found a 1976D double die penny in a roll from his local bank and later sold it for over $700. Another collector discovered an off-center example in a childhood coin jar that brought in nearly $300 at auction. These aren't legends. They're documented sales that happened within the last few years. And every year, new examples are still being found. So the next time you see a penny dated 1976, don't dismiss it. Turn it over. Look for the D, check the edges, study the letters. That tiny coin might not just be spare change. It might be a survivor from one of America's most important years, carrying both history and hidden potential in the palm of your hand. Because sometimes, the most valuable discoveries aren't buried underground or locked in vaults. They're sitting quietly in everyday places, waiting for someone curious enough to look twice. And that's what makes the 1976 D. Lincoln penny so fascinating, not just what it's worth, but what it represents. A reminder that history doesn't always come wrapped in gold. Sometimes it comes copper-plated and overlooked. So before you toss your next penny aside, ask yourself one question: what if this one is different? Most people would never guess that a single penny hiding in a jar, drawer, or old wallet could be worth far more than 1 cent. But today's story is about a quiet, ordinary-looking coin from 1978 that has surprised collectors again and again. The 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny looks common, but under the right conditions, it can be rare, valuable, and even life-changing for the person who finds the right one. This coin is officially called the 1978 Lincoln Memorial Cent with no mint mark. That simply means it was made at the Philadelphia Mint, which did not use a mint mark on pennies during that time. At first glance, it looks just like millions of other pennies from the late 20th century. But behind its simple copper color and familiar Lincoln portrait lies a fascinating story of American history, minting changes, and collector demand that continues to grow today. To understand why this penny matters, we need to travel back to the late 1970s. In 1978, the United States was dealing with inflation, rising metal prices, and major economic shifts. The cost of producing coins was climbing, especially for the 1-cent piece, which was still made mostly of copper. At that time, pennies were composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc, the same basic formula used for decades. The Lincoln cent itself had already been in circulation for nearly 70 years by 1978. First introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, it was the first U.S. coin to feature a real person. By the late 1950s, the design on the back had changed from wheat stalks to the Lincoln Memorial, and that design remained in place through 2008. So in 1978, Americans were already very familiar with the look of this penny. It was something people barely noticed anymore, even though billions were still being produced each year. In fact, in 1978 alone, the Philadelphia Mint struck over 5 billion pennies. That massive number makes the coin seem extremely common, and in most cases it is. But what makes this penny interesting is not just how many were made, but how a few small differences, errors, and high-grade examples have turned some of these everyday coins into collector treasures. Let's talk about what makes the 1978 no-mint mark penny special. On the front, or obverse, you see Abraham Lincoln facing right, with the word Liberty to the left and the year 1978 to the right. Above Lincoln's head is the phrase, "In God we trust." On the back, or reverse, you see the Lincoln Memorial Building, with United States of America and 1 cent around it, and EPLURIBUSUNUM above the memorial. The metal composition is one of the most important features of this coin. Because it was made before 1982, it contains mostly copper. That alone makes it more appealing to some collectors and metal enthusiasts, especially since modern pennies are mostly zinc with a thin copper coating. Many people enjoy collecting these older copper cents because they represent the end of an era in U.S. coinage. But where things really get interesting is in the details. Some 1978 pennies were struck with unusually sharp features, strong details, and smooth surfaces. These high-quality examples, especially those that have never been circulated, can be worth far more than face value. Collectors grade coins on a scale that measures how well the coin has been preserved, and the highest grades are extremely rare, even for coins that were made in the billions. Even more exciting are the error coins. During the minting process, mistakes sometimes happen, and in 1978, several types of errors were produced. These include doubled dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and weak strikes. One of the most famous errors from this year is the doubled die obverse, where parts of the lettering and date appear doubled, as if they were printed twice. These errors are not easy to find, but when they appear, collectors pay close attention. So why can a 1978 no-mint mark penny be valuable if so many were made? The answer comes down to rarity within condition and variety. While billions exist, Only a very small number survived in perfect condition, and even fewer contain dramatic minting errors. Collectors are not just looking for old coins, they are looking for the best examples of those coins. To understand this better, let's look at real-world prices. A typical circulated 1978 penny is usually worth 1 to 3 cents. Even an uncirculated example might only be worth a few dimes. But when you reach the highest grades, the value changes dramatically. In professional grading systems, coins graded M-67 or higher are considered exceptionally well preserved. A 1978 penny graded M-67 red has sold at auction for several $100s. Some examples graded M-68 red, which is extremely rare for this date, have sold for over $1,000. Error coins can bring even more attention. A well-known double-die 1978 penny has sold for several $100s, depending on the strength of the doubling and the coin's condition. Off-center strikes and other dramatic mint errors can also reach prices in the hundreds or even thousands, especially if the error is visually striking and the coin remains in excellent shape. Now let's talk about how you can identify a real 1978 no mint mark penny and avoid fakes or altered coins. First, check the date and the area below it. If there is no letter beneath the year, that means it was struck in Philadelphia. That is normal for this coin. Next, look at the color and weight. A genuine 1978 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams and have a solid copper appearance. If the coin feels unusually light or looks silver-colored, it may have been altered or damaged. To spot potential double-die errors, use a magnifying glass or coin loop and closely examine the date, the word Liberty, and the phrase "In God we trust." True double dies show clear separation between letters, not just blurry or flat edges. Mechanical doubling, which is much more common, looks like a shadow or shelf-like effect and usually does not carry significant value. Also look for off-center strikes, where part of the design is missing and blank metal shows on one side. These are easy to spot and often valuable, especially if the date is still visible. Clipped planchets, where a portion of the coin is missing in a curved shape, can also be genuine mint errors and worth keeping. It's important to avoid cleaning coins. Cleaning can remove natural surfaces and reduce value dramatically, even if the coin looks shinier afterward. Collectors prefer original surfaces, even if they show natural aging or toning. Now for some fun and surprising facts about the 1978 penny. This coin comes from the final years of solid copper Lincoln cents. Just 4 years later, in 1982, the U.S. Mint officially switched to mostly zinc cores with thin copper plating, forever changing the feel and composition of the penny. That makes the 1978 cent part of the last generation of traditional copper pennies in American history. Another interesting detail is how many of these pennies are still out there today. Because so many were made, and because pennies circulate for decades, it is still possible to find a 1978 penny in your change today. That means anyone, anywhere, could stumble across a high-grade or error example without even realizing it. There's also something emotionally powerful about this coin. It represents a time when cash was king, payphones lined the streets, and a penny still felt like it mattered. For collectors, holding a 1978 penny is like holding a tiny piece of everyday American life from more than 4 decades ago. So why do collectors love the 1978 no mint mark penny today? One reason is accessibility. Unlike rare gold coins or early colonial pieces that cost thousands of dollars just to own, this coin is easy to find and affordable to collect. That makes it perfect for beginners, casual collectors, and even kids discovering coin collecting for the first time. Another reason is the thrill of the hunt. Because valuable versions of this penny still exist in circulation, collectors enjoy searching rolls of coins, old jars, and inherited collections, hoping to find that one special example. The idea that something valuable could be hiding in plain sight keeps people coming back again and again. Collectors also appreciate this coin because it bridges the gap between modern and classic U.S. coinage. It has a familiar design, a traditional copper composition, and a connection to the final years before major changes in penny production. It represents the end of an era while still feeling modern enough to relate to. And then there's the story of condition rarity. The fact that billions were made, yet only a handful exist in near-perfect condition, makes those top examples feel almost magical. It reminds us that rarity isn't always about age. Sometimes it's about survival, care, and chance. If you're curious about whether you might own one of these valuable examples, the process is simple. Start by checking your change, old coin jars, and family collections. Look for bright red copper color, sharp details, and clean surfaces. Examine the lettering and date for doubling. If you find something unusual or especially well preserved, consider having it evaluated by a professional coin grading service. Even if you don't find a high-dollar example, there's still value in the experience. Each coin you examine teaches you something about history, design, and craftsmanship. It sharpens your eye and deepens your appreciation for the money we use every day without thinking. The 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny may not look like much at first glance. It's small, quiet, and easy to overlook. But its story proves that sometimes the most ordinary objects carry the most surprising potential. It reminds us that value is not always obvious, and that hidden treasures often blend in with the everyday world around us. So the next time you receive change at a store or open an old drawer filled with loose coins, take a second look. That penny you've ignored for years might not just be spare change. It might be a piece of history. It might be a collector's prize. And in rare cases, it might be worth far more than you ever imagined. Because sometimes the most valuable discoveries aren't locked in vaults or museums. Sometimes they're sitting quietly in your pocket, waiting to be noticed. Most people would walk right past this penny without giving it a second thought. But what if I told you that a single 1994 Lincoln penny, one you might already own, could be worth far more than 1 cent, and in rare cases, hundreds or even thousands of dollars? Today, we're uncovering the true story behind the 1994 no-mint mark Lincoln penny and why collectors are still searching for it. Let's start with what this coin actually is. The 1994 Lincoln penny with no mint mark was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally does not place mint marks on most of its coins. That means if your 1994 penny doesn't have a small letter under the date, that's completely normal, and it confirms it came from Philadelphia. But what's not normal is what some of these coins hide in plain sight. Rare errors, unusual finishes, and small details that can turn pocket change into collector treasure. The year 1994 was part of a major turning point in American coin history. By the early 1980s, copper prices had risen sharply, making it too expensive for the U.S. Mint to continue producing solid copper pennies. So instead, pennies became copper-plated zinc, lighter, cheaper, and more practical for mass production. By 1994, this newer composition had been standard for over a decade, but the Lincoln cent was still one of the most widely produced coins in the nation, with billions entering circulation each year. This was also a time when the mint was pushing efficiency and speed, producing coins at enormous volumes to meet demand. That fast-paced production environment is one reason why unusual errors slip through quality control, and those mistakes are what make certain 1994 pennies especially valuable today. Now let's take a closer look at the design itself. On the front of the coin, you'll see Abraham Lincoln's profile facing right, a design first introduced in 1909 to honor his 100th birthday. It was the first time a real person ever appeared on a circulating U.S. coin. By 1994, the design had been familiar to Americans for generations, but it still carried strong historical symbolism: honesty, leadership, unity, and perseverance. Above Lincoln's head, you'll see the word liberty. In front of his face is the phrase, "In God we trust." Beneath his portrait is the date, 1994, and if there's no letter under it, that confirms it came from the Philadelphia Mint. On the back of the coin, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, which was used on pennies from 1959 through 2008. Inside the memorial, if you look closely, you can actually see a tiny image of Lincoln seated between the pillars. That detail is so small that many people never notice it, even after decades of handling pennies. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and is made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. To most people, it feels and looks like any other modern penny. But in the world of coin collecting, what matters isn't just the design, it's the tiny variations that most people miss. So why is the 1994 no-mint mark Lincoln penny interesting at all, when billions were made? The answer lies in rare errors and exceptional condition examples. While most 1994 pennies are only worth face value, a very small percentage were struck with mistakes, and those mistakes can dramatically increase a coin's value. One of the most desirable errors is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin blank is not properly aligned during minting. causing part of the design to be missing or shifted to one side. A well-centered, off-center 1994 penny with a visible date and strong details can sell for anywhere from $50 to several $100s, depending on how dramatic the error is. Another valuable error is the double die. This occurs when the coin die receives multiple impressions during creation, resulting in doubled letters or numbers on the finished coin. On a 1994 penny, doubling may appear in the date, the word liberty, or the motto in God we trust. Clear doubling that can be seen without magnification can make a coin worth several $100s, and in rare cases over 1,000. Then there are broad strikes, clipped planchets, and rotated dies, all production errors that collectors actively hunt for. Even a small defect, if verified as a true mint error, can transform a normal penny into a highly desirable collectible. But errors aren't the only source of value. Condition matters just as much. Most 1994 pennies were heavily circulated, meaning they were scratched, worn, and dulled by years of handling. But a small number were saved directly from mint rolls and preserved in near-perfect condition. These high-grade coins, especially those certified by professional grading services, can sell for surprisingly strong prices. A 1994 no-mint mark penny graded MS67 or higher, meaning nearly flawless, has sold at auction for several $100s. Coins graded MS68, which are extremely rare for modern pennies, can approach or exceed the $1,000 mark when demand is strong. That may sound unbelievable for a penny that once bought nothing, but in the collector world, rarity plus condition equals value, even for modern coins. Let's talk about real auction examples. Certified high-grade 1994 Lincoln cents have sold in major coin auctions for $200 to $800 depending on quality. Error coins, especially dramatic off-center strikes or strong double dies, have sold anywhere from $100 to over $1,500. These are documented, real-world sales, not exaggerated listings. And they show that even recent coins can become serious collectibles under the right circumstances. Now, how can you tell if your 1994 penny is special or just ordinary? Start by checking the date and the area beneath it. If there's no mint mark, that's correct. It means Philadelphia. Next, look closely at the numbers and letters. Do any appear doubled, thicker, or blurry in a way that looks intentional rather than damaged? Use a magnifying glass or phone camera zoom to examine the date, liberty, and in God we trust. Then check the coin's shape and edges. Is it perfectly round, or does part of the design seem missing or shifted? Look for cracks in the surface, raised lines, or blank areas where details should be. These can indicate genuine mint errors. Also check the color. A normal 1994 penny should appear copper red or brown depending on wear. If it looks silvery or unusually dark, that could suggest plating errors or environmental damage, though only testing can confirm the difference. Weight can help too. A normal 1994 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. A significantly lighter or heavier coin could indicate a wrong planchet error or metal defect. One important thing to know is that damaged coins are not the same as error coins. Scratches, dents, corrosion, and bending usually reduce value. Real mint errors happen during production and usually show smooth, natural surfaces rather than sharp impact marks. If you think you found something unusual, the best step is to compare it to photos of known error coins online or consult a local coin shop or grading service. Professional grading can confirm authenticity and protect your coin's value if it turns out to be rare. Now let's move into some fun facts about the 1994 penny that most people don't know. First, more Lincoln cents were produced in 1994 than almost any other denomination that year. The Philadelphia Mint alone struck over 6 billion pennies, making it one of the most widely produced coins in U.S. history. And yet, among those billions, only a tiny fraction survive in near-perfect condition today. Second, this penny belongs to the longest-running coin design in U.S. history. The Lincoln cent has appeared in circulation continuously since 1909, longer than any other American coin portrait. That makes every Lincoln penny, including 1994, part of a historic lineage that stretches across more than a century. Third, even though the penny costs more than 1 cent to produce today, it remains in circulation largely because of tradition and public familiarity. That makes modern pennies like the 1994 edition a fascinating blend of history, economics, and culture. Fourth, collectors often build full year-end mint collections of Lincoln cents, meaning they seek examples from every year, mint, and major variety. Even common dates become valuable in top condition because collectors need them to complete sets. And finally, some of the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever sold were once thought to be ordinary change. Rare varieties from earlier decades were discovered decades after minting, sitting unnoticed in drawers, jars, and collections. That's one reason modern coins like the 1994 penny are carefully examined today. History shows that today's pocket change can become tomorrow's treasure. So why do collectors love the 1994 no mint mark Lincoln penny? First, it represents a modern era of U.S. coinage, a time when copper disappeared, minting technology advanced, and production reached record levels. That makes it historically meaningful, even if it looks ordinary. Second, its massive production numbers create a fascinating contrast with the rarity of high-grade survivors and error coins. When billions exist, but only a few hundred remain flawless, collectors pay attention. Third, it's accessible. Anyone can search through spare change or old coin jars and potentially find something valuable. Unlike gold coins or rare antiques, Lincoln pennies offer everyday people a chance to experience the thrill of discovery. Fourth, error hunting adds excitement. Every coin becomes a mystery. Is this one normal, or does it hide something unusual? That sense of possibility keeps collectors engaged and curious. And finally, Lincoln cents carry emotional weight. Many people remember sorting pennies as kids, filling coin books, or learning about Abraham Lincoln in school. Holding one connects people to both history and personal memory, and that emotional connection is something money alone can't replace. Now let's bring it all together. Most 1994 no-mint mark Lincoln pennies are worth exactly 1 cent. That's the truth, and honesty matters in collecting. But a small number of these coins stand out. Error strikes, doubled dies, off-center designs, and near-perfect condition examples can be worth tens, hundreds, or even thousands of dollars. And the only way to know if yours is special is to look closely. That's what makes this coin so exciting. It hides in plain sight. It blends into everyday life. And yet within the ordinary lies the potential for something extraordinary. Somewhere right now, someone has a 1994 penny sitting in a drawer that could surprise them. It might be in a coin jar, a piggy bank, or an old wallet that hasn't been opened in years. And until someone looks closely, its story remains untold. So the next time you see a penny dated 1994, don't dismiss it. Turn it over. Study the details. Check the edges. Look for doubling. Feel the weight. Because sometimes the smallest objects carry the biggest surprises. And who knows? The next remarkable Lincoln penny story might start with the coin already sitting in your pocket. What if the penny sitting in your pocket right now isn't just spare change, but a hidden collector treasure? Today, we're uncovering the real story behind the 1995 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that millions overlook, yet collectors quietly search for. The 1995 Lincoln penny without a mint mark is one of the most common coins ever made in the United States. But within this ordinary appearance lies a fascinating story. Most people don't realize that no mint mark doesn't mean rare by default. It actually means the coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. And in 1995, Philadelphia produced more than 6 billion pennies. That's billion with a B, but despite those huge numbers, certain versions of this coin can be surprisingly valuable, and a few rare examples have sold for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. This coin is part of the Lincoln Memorial Cent series, which ran from 1959 through 2008. It features Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial Building on the back. For nearly 50 years, this design became one of the most recognizable coins in American history. And the 1995 penny sits right in the middle of that era, a time when cash was still king. Vending machines took coins instead of cards, and almost every American handled pennies daily. In 1995, the U.S. Mint was producing enormous quantities of coins to meet public demand. The economy was growing, cash circulation was high, and the penny was still heavily used in everyday purchases. Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco were all striking cents, but only Philadelphia coins were made without a mint mark. That's why when you see a 1995 penny with no letter under the date, it means it came from Philadelphia. At first glance, the coin looks exactly like millions of others. On the front, Abraham Lincoln faces right, wearing his familiar suit and bow tie. Above him are the words "In God we trust," with Liberty to the left and the date, 1995, to the right. On the back, you'll see the Lincoln Memorial, with tiny seated Lincoln visible inside the building, along with United States of America at the top and 1 cent at the bottom. The metal composition of the 1995 penny is mostly zinc, with a thin copper coating. Since 1982, pennies have been made of 97.5% zinc and just 2.5% copper. That change happened to save costs, but it also created differences in weight and durability compared to older copper pennies. A 1995 penny weighs about 2.5 grams and has a smooth edge with no reading. So if this coin is so common, why are collectors interested in it at all? The answer lies in condition and errors. Most 1995 pennies are only worth face value, 1 cent. But when a coin survives in exceptional condition, especially in uncirculated or mint state condition, its value increases. And when a coin contains a rare error or unusual feature, its value can jump dramatically. One of the most famous varieties connected to 1995 pennies is the 1995 double die obverse. This is not just doubling from damage or wear. It's a true minting error where the die itself was misaligned during production, causing visible doubling on certain letters. On this variety, the doubling is most noticeable on the words "In God we trust" and "Liberty." When you look closely, the letters appear thickened or shadowed, almost like a double image. This error is highly collectible. While most regular 1995 pennies are worth only 1 cent, a genuine 1995 double die penny in strong condition can sell for hundreds of dollars, and in some cases, over $1,000. Another factor that affects value is grade. Coin grading measures how much wear or damage a coin has. A circulated penny that's been used in everyday transactions usually has scratches, dullness, and worn details. But an uncirculated coin, especially one graded MS65, MS66, or higher, can command significant premiums. A standard 1995 no-mint mark penny graded MS67 red, meaning it still has its original copper color and no visible wear, has sold for well over $100. Some top-graded examples have sold for several $100s. That may not sound life-changing, but consider this. These coins originally cost 1 cent. Turning 1 cent into $100 or more is a return that almost no other investment can match. Now let's talk about real collector sales. In recent years, high-grade 1995 no-mint mark pennies certified by professional grading services have sold in the range of $100 to $300, depending on quality and eye appeal. Meanwhile, the 1995 double die obverse variety has sold for anywhere from $50 in circulated condition to over $1,000 in mint state examples. One particularly sharp example, graded MS66, sold at auction for more than $2,000. And that's not hype, those are documented collector sales. But here's the important part. Not every 1995 penny is valuable. In fact, most are worth exactly 1 cent. The real treasure lies in the details. So how can you tell if your 1995 no-mint mark penny might be special? Start by looking closely at the front of the coin, especially the words "In God we trust." Use a magnifying glass or your phone camera. If the letters look doubled, thick, or shadowed, especially on the IN, God, and WE, you may have a double die variety. Also check the word Liberty and the date itself. True double die coins show consistent doubling across multiple letters, not just one spot. Next, check the condition. Does the coin still have bright copper color? Are the details sharp and clear? Is there minimal scratching or wear? Coins that look almost new, even after decades, are far more valuable than worn ones. It's also important to understand what does not add value. Damage like scratches, dents, corrosion, or environmental staining usually lowers a coin's worth. Coins that look doubled because they were hit, scraped, or worn unevenly are not double die errors. Those are just damaged coins. If you think you may have something valuable, consider having it authenticated and graded by a professional service like PCGS or NGC. While grading costs money, it can protect you from being underpaid and makes your coin easier to sell. Now let's talk about counterfeits. While it might sound strange to fake a penny, rare error pennies have been altered by dishonest sellers. Some people try to create artificial doubling using tools or chemicals. The key difference is that real double die errors have smooth, rounded doubling that matches the original letter shape, while fake doubling usually looks sharp, uneven, or scraped. If the surface looks damaged or unnatural, that's a red flag. Real double die coins also show consistent doubling across multiple design elements, not just a single letter or corner. When in doubt, professional authentication is the safest route. Here's something fascinating. Because over 6 billion 1995 pennies were struck at Philadelphia, statistically speaking, there are still rare varieties sitting in jars, drawers, and piggy banks across the country. Some collectors call this treasure hiding in plain sight. Unlike ancient coins buried underground, these treasures may already be in your home. You just haven't looked closely enough yet. Another fun fact is that the Lincoln Memorial on the back of the coin contains a tiny engraving of Lincoln seated inside the building. It's one of the few U.S. coins that shows the same person on both sides. Most people never notice this detail unless they use magnification, but it's one of the reasons collectors admire the design. The 1995 penny also marks an era before digital payments changed everyday transactions. This coin circulated during a time when people still counted out coins at grocery stores, paid parking meters by hand, and carried change in their pockets daily. That makes it a small but powerful piece of American economic history. Collectors today love the 1995 no-mint mark penny not because it's rare in general, but because it represents something special, the thrill of discovery. Anyone can own one, but only those who look carefully can find the valuable varieties. It's the idea that something ordinary can suddenly become extraordinary with the right knowledge. This coin also appeals to beginners because it's affordable and accessible. You don't need thousands of dollars to start collecting. You can literally begin by checking your change. And for seasoned collectors, high-grade examples and rare varieties offer a real challenge, finding the best possible specimen in a sea of billions. There's also something deeply satisfying about holding a coin that's nearly 3 decades old and realizing it has traveled through countless hands, businesses, and moments in everyday life. Every scratch tells a story. Every untouched surface tells another. And here's another surprising detail. Because modern pennies are mostly zinc, many corrode or deteriorate over time if exposed to moisture. That means truly high-grade 1995 pennies may become harder to find in the future, especially ones that retain their full copper color and sharp details. As surviving top-quality examples decline, collector interest often rises. So what should you do if you find one? First, don't clean it. Cleaning can destroy collector value instantly. Even a rare error coin can lose most of its worth if it's polished or scrubbed. Handle it carefully by the edges, store it in a protective holder, and compare it to online images of known varieties. Second, learn before you sell. Many people unknowingly spend valuable coins or sell them cheaply because they don't recognize what they have. A few minutes of research can make a huge difference. And finally, enjoy the hunt. Coin collecting isn't just about money. It's about curiosity, history, and discovery. It's about looking at something ordinary and seeing something extraordinary. The 1995 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a perfect example of this. To most people, it's just spare change. But to collectors, it's a reminder that hidden value often lies in plain sight, and sometimes the smallest coins carry the biggest stories. So the next time you get change at a store, pause for a moment. Look at the pennies. Check the dates. Look for doubling. You might just be holding something far more valuable than 1 cent. And even if you're not, you'll be holding a piece of American history, one that connects you to billions of moments across decades, all wrapped into a tiny copper-colored coin. Because sometimes the real treasure isn't just the money, it's the discovery. Most people would walk right past this penny without a second glance. But what if I told you that a simple 2000 Lincoln penny sitting in loose change could be worth far more than 1 cent, and in rare cases, thousands of dollars? Today, we're uncovering the true story behind the 2000 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, why collectors hunt for it, and how you might already own one without realizing it. The 2000 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is one of the most familiar coins in modern American history, yet it holds surprising secrets. If your penny says 2000 on the front and does not have a mint mark below the date, that means it was made in Philadelphia. Unlike other U.S. coins, pennies from Philadelphia usually don't carry a mint mark, which makes them look ordinary. But ordinary doesn't always mean common in the collector world. This penny was issued during a historic year. The year 2000 marked the beginning of a new millennium, and the United States Mint was producing massive numbers of coins to meet everyday demand. Americans were using cash heavily at the time, and the Lincoln cent remained the backbone of small transactions. It was also the final year before major design changes, and new themes would reshape American coinage in the years ahead. By the year 2000, the Lincoln penny had already been in circulation for over 90 years. First introduced in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, it became the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical person. By the time the year 2000 rolled around, this coin had become one of the most recognized and trusted pieces of American money. The 2000 no-mint mark penny was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most important mints in the United States. That year alone, over 5.2 billion Lincoln pennies were produced in Philadelphia. On the surface, that number sounds enormous, and it is. But high production doesn't automatically mean low value. In fact, some of the most valuable coins in history come from years with massive mintages, because hidden errors, rare conditions, and collector demand can turn everyday coins into treasures. Let's take a closer look at the coin itself. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" along the top, Liberty to the left, and the year 2000 to the right. There is no mint mark under the date, which confirms it was made in Philadelphia. The design was created by Victor David Brenner and had been used for decades by this point, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history. On the back, you'll see the Lincoln Memorial, with the words United States of America and 1 cent along the top and bottom. If you look very closely, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. This design was introduced in 1959 and remained in use until 2008, making the 2000 penny part of a classic era of American coinage. As for metal, the 2000 penny is made mostly of zinc, with a thin outer layer of copper. Specifically, it's 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper. This composition was introduced in 1982 when the cost of copper became too expensive for full copper pennies. That means the 2000 penny weighs about 2.5 grams, compared to older copper cents that weigh 3.11 grams. So far, everything about this coin sounds normal. But here's where the story gets interesting. While most 2000 no-mint mark pennies are only worth face value, certain examples are worth much more, and in rare cases, thousands of dollars. These valuable coins usually fall into 3 categories: high-grade condition coins, rare mint errors, and special strike varieties. Let's start with condition. In coin collecting, condition is everything. A penny that's been circulating in pockets, purses, and cash registers for years is usually scratched, dull, and worn. But a penny that was saved straight from a mint roll and never used can look almost brand new. These are called uncirculated coins. For the 2000 no-mint mark penny, uncirculated examples can sell for a few dollars, especially if they have strong color, sharp details, and clean surfaces. But when you move into the highest grades, things change dramatically. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC use a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being a perfect coin. Very few coins ever receive a perfect 70 grade. Some 2000 no-mint mark pennies graded MS67 or MS68 red have sold for over $100, and in certain cases, several $100s. That may not sound shocking at first, but remember, this is for a coin that originally cost 1 cent. That's a return most investments can't touch. But condition alone isn't the real excitement. The biggest money comes from mint errors. Mint errors happen when something goes wrong during the coin-making process. And when billions of coins are produced in a single year, even tiny mistakes can slip through. One of the most famous and valuable error types is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin blank isn't properly aligned in the press, causing part of the design to be missing. Some 2000 no-mint mark pennies with dramatic off-center strikes have sold for $50 to $300, depending on how much of the design remains visible. Another major error is the double die. This occurs when the coin die receives a doubled image during manufacturing, causing letters or numbers to appear doubled on the coin. On Lincoln cents, doubling is often seen on the date, the word Liberty, or In God We Trust. Certain doubled die varieties from the year 2000 have sold for hundreds of dollars, especially when the doubling is strong and clearly visible without magnification. Then there are broad strikes, where the coin is struck without a retaining collar, causing it to spread outward and appear wider than normal. These errors can sell for $40 to $150, depending on condition and appearance. But one of the most fascinating errors involves the wrong metal. Every once in a while, a penny is accidentally struck on a blank meant for another coin. For example, a penny struck on a dime planchet would be silver-colored and weigh less than normal. A penny struck on a foreign planchet might look completely different. While these are extremely rare, when they happen, they can sell for thousands of dollars. Although no widely publicized wrong planchet examples from the 2000 no-mint mark penny are known to be common, a confirmed case could easily bring several $1,000s at auction due to its rarity and surprise factor. Now let's talk about real-world value examples. In one auction, a 2000 no-mint mark Lincoln penny graded MS68 red sold for over $500. Another example with a strong double die error sold for around $750. Off-center strike examples regularly sell between $75 and $250, depending on how dramatic the error is and how well the coin is preserved. These are not rumors or internet myths. These are documented sales from professional auction houses and coin marketplaces. And the most exciting part is that many of these coins started out as pocket change. So how do you know if you might have a valuable one? First, check the date. Make sure it says 2000 and has no mint mark under the year. That confirms it's a Philadelphia issue. Next, examine the coin closely under good lighting. Look at the letters in Liberty, "In God We Trust," and the date. Do they look doubled or blurry? Does anything appear misaligned, missing, or stretched? These could be signs of a double die or strike error. Then look at the shape of the coin. Is it perfectly round, or does it look wider, thinner, or off-center? Off-center strikes and broad strikes are usually easy to spot, even without magnification. Next, weigh the coin if you can. A normal 2000 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it weighs significantly more or less, it could be struck on the wrong metal, which is extremely rare but highly valuable. Also pay attention to color and surface quality. Bright red copper color with sharp details and nowhere could indicate an uncirculated coin, which increases value significantly. As for spotting fakes, it's important to know that counterfeit Lincoln pennies are uncommon, but altered coins do exist. Some people try to modify dates, add doubling artificially, or damage coins to mimic errors. A real error coin usually shows natural flow lines, consistent metal movement, and smooth surfaces around the error area. If you believe you found something unusual or valuable, the safest step is to have it evaluated by a professional coin dealer or submit it to a third-party grading service like PCGS or NGC. These services authenticate and grade coins, which often increases their market value and buyer trust. Now let's talk about a few fun and surprising facts about the 2000 no-mint mark penny. First, the year 2000 was one of the last full years of the Lincoln Memorial reverse design, before special commemorative reverses and later design changes began. That means this coin represents the end of a long chapter in U.S. coin history. Second, many people don't realize that pennies from the year 2000 are now over 2 decades old. That means millions of them have already been lost, damaged, melted, or permanently removed from circulation. High-grade examples are becoming harder to find every year. Third, because the year 2000 marks the start of a new millennium, many people saved coins from that year as keepsakes. While most of those saved coins are ordinary, some ended up being error coins without anyone realizing it at the time. Fourth, collectors love modern error coins because they combine familiarity with surprise. A coin you've seen thousands of times suddenly becomes rare and valuable when something goes wrong in its production. And finally, the Lincoln cent is the most collected coin series in American history. Millions of people collect Lincoln pennies by date, mint, and variety. That constant demand helps support long-term value, even for modern issues like the 2000 no-mint mark penny. So why do collectors love this coin today? Part of the appeal is accessibility. Almost anyone can find a 2000 penny in their change jar, wallet, or coin roll from the bank. That makes it exciting because you don't need to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars to start searching. Another reason is mystery. You never know what you'll find. One coin might be worth a cent. Another from the same year might be worth $100, $500, or more. That sense of discovery keeps collectors searching. There's also historical appeal. This coin represents the turn of the millennium, a moment when technology, culture, and everyday life were rapidly changing. Yet the penny remained a constant, quietly passing from hand to hand across the country. And finally, there's emotional value. Many collectors first learned about coins by searching through change with a parent or grandparent. The Lincoln penny often becomes someone's first collectible coin, making it both nostalgic and meaningful. As we wrap up, here's the key takeaway. The 2000 no mint mark Lincoln penny may look ordinary, but it isn't always. In the right condition or with the right error, it can become a valuable collectible worth far more than its face value. Whether it's a high-grade uncirculated coin, a doubled die, an off-center strike, or another mint mistake, this penny proves that treasure doesn't always come from ancient times or distant places. Sometimes it's sitting quietly in your pocket. So the next time you get change at a store or open an old coin jar, take a closer look. That small copper-colored penny from the year 2000 might just be hiding a story, a surprise, or even a piece of modern American treasure waiting to be discovered. Most people would walk right past this penny without giving it a second thought. But what if I told you that a small copper-colored coin from 2006, one with a tiny letter under Lincoln's date, could tell the story of America's money, modern minting, and even hidden collector value? Today, we're uncovering the truth behind the 2006 D mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary, but isn't nearly as simple as it seems. This coin is the Lincoln 1-cent piece, dated 2006, with a small D mint mark below the year. That single letter tells us where the coin was made, at the Denver Mint, one of the most important coin-producing facilities in the United States. Millions of Americans have held this penny in their hands, dropped it in jars, or used it at checkout counters. Without realizing it represents the final years of a historic design era that lasted nearly half a century. The Lincoln penny itself has one of the longest-running designs in American history. It was first issued in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. That made it the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical person instead of a symbolic figure like Liberty. By 2006, the Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for nearly 100 years, and the version made that year was part of the familiar Lincoln Memorial design, a look Americans had grown up seeing in their pockets and wallets. The year 2006 sits quietly between two major milestones in U.S. coinage. Just 3 years later, in 2009, the Lincoln cent would receive special anniversary designs. And only 4 years after that, the reverse would change permanently to the Union Shield design we still see today. That makes the 2006 D penny one of the final regular-issue memorial cents, closing out an era that began in 1959. In 2006, the U.S. Mint produced billions of pennies to meet everyday demand. The Denver Mint alone struck over 2.4 billion Lincoln cents that year. That sounds like a huge number, and it is, but it doesn't mean every one of them is the same, or that they all hold the same value today. In fact, some examples from this exact year and mint have sold for surprisingly high prices due to condition, rarity in top grades, and minting errors. Let's take a closer look at what makes this coin special. The 2006 D Lincoln penny is made mostly of zinc, with a thin copper coating on the outside. Since 1982, U.S. cents have used this copper-plated zinc composition instead of solid copper. The coin weighs 2.5 grams and measures about 19 millimeters across, about the size of your fingernail. But despite its small size, the details on the coin carry big meaning. On the front, or obverse, you'll see Abraham Lincoln facing to the right. This portrait was designed by Victor David Brenner in 1909 and is one of the most recognizable images in American coinage. Above Lincoln's head is the phrase, "In God we trust." In front of his face is the word Liberty. And just below the date, you'll find the mint mark, a small D, showing the coin was struck in Denver. Flip the coin over, and you'll see the Lincoln Memorial Building in Washington, D.C. inside the columns of the memorial. If you look closely, you can actually see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln. Above the building is the phrase EPLURIBUSUNUM, which means out of many, one. Below it is 1 cent, and underneath that, United States of America. This design remained unchanged from 1959 until 2008, making it one of the longest-running reverse designs in U.S. history. So by the time the 2006 D penny was released, it was part of a tradition that had already lasted nearly 50 years. Now, Here's where things get interesting. Even though billions of these pennies were minted, not all of them survived in good condition. Most were quickly put into circulation where they were scratched, worn, dropped, and damaged. Over time, finding a 2006 D penny in pristine, uncirculated condition became much harder than people expect. Collectors care deeply about condition. A penny that's been used for years might be worth only 1 cent. But one that looks brand new, with full shine, sharp details, and no marks, can be worth much more, especially if it's professionally graded by a coin grading service. In fact, some 2006 D Lincoln cents in top condition have sold for impressive prices at auction. While most circulated examples are worth face value, uncirculated coins graded MS68 or higher have sold for hundreds of dollars. In rare cases, near-perfect specimens have sold for over $1,000. That's not because the coin is old, but because coins in flawless condition are incredibly rare, even for modern issues. But condition isn't the only thing that can drive value. Errors and varieties play a huge role too. Mint errors happen when something goes wrong during the coin production process. That could mean a coin is struck off-center, struck twice, struck on the wrong metal, or struck with part of the design missing or distorted. And yes, the 2006 D penny has known error varieties that collectors actively seek out. One of the most popular errors is the double die. This happens when the coin die receives a misaligned impression during manufacturing, causing parts of the design, especially letters or numbers, to appear doubled on the coin. On some 2006 D pennies, collectors have found doubling in the date in the word Liberty, or in God we trust. These aren't just blurry or worn letters, they look like two overlapping images. Another collectible error is the off-center strike, where the coin design isn't centered on the blank metal disc. Some of these errors leave part of the coin blank, and others cut off parts of the design entirely. The more dramatic and visually striking the error, the more collectors are willing to pay. There are also clipped planchets, where part of the coin blank was cut incorrectly before striking, leaving a curved or straight section missing. These unusual shapes make the coin stand out instantly and increase its value. And in rare cases, some 2006 pennies were struck on the wrong metal blank, such as copper instead of zinc, creating transitional or wrong planchet errors. These are extremely rare and can sell for thousands of dollars if authenticated. Now let's talk about real-world value. Most 2006 D pennies found in circulation today are worth exactly 1 cent. But uncirculated examples can sell for anywhere from 10 cents to a few dollars depending on condition. Coins graded MS66 or MS67 often sell for $20 to $100. MS68 examples have sold for several $100s. And the rarest top-grade examples, with exceptional surface quality and strike detail, have crossed the $1,000 mark in auction settings. Error coins, depending on type and severity, can range from $25 to several $100s, and in rare cases, well over $1,000. These prices are based on real collector sales, not hype or speculation, which is why careful inspection of modern coins can sometimes pay off. So how do you tell if you have a valuable one? Start by checking the date and mint mark. Look for 2006 with a small D beneath the year. Then examine the coin under good lighting. A magnifying glass or phone camera zoom works well. Look closely at the letters and numbers. Do they appear doubled or unusually thick? Does the design seem off-center? Is part of the coin missing or oddly shaped? Next, look at the surface. A valuable uncirculated coin should still have its original shine, called mint luster. The color should be even, with no dark spots, scratches, or wear on Lincoln's face or coat. The sharper and cleaner the details, the better. Weight can also help. A standard 2006 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it weighs significantly more or less, it could indicate an error or unusual composition. If you think you found something special, the next step is professional authentication. Coin grading services like PCGS and NGC can confirm authenticity, assign a grade, and encapsulate the coin in a protective holder. That certification often increases buyer confidence and market value. Now let's talk about counterfeits. Fake pennies are less common than fake high-value coins, but they do exist, especially error coins. Some people alter regular coins to imitate double dies or off-center strikes. Signs of tampering include tool marks, uneven surfaces, or unnatural-looking doubling that doesn't match known varieties. A real mint error will look natural and consistent with how coins are struck. The metal flow will appear smooth, not carved or scratched. If something looks forced or artificial, it probably is. One helpful step is comparing your coin to images of verified examples online from trusted auction houses or coin grading companies. And again, professional grading is the safest way to confirm authenticity. Now here's something surprising. Even though the 2006 D-penny is relatively modern, it represents a turning point in U.S. coin history. It was struck at a time when the cost to make a penny was already higher than its face value, a problem that continues today. In fact, the U.S. Mint has spent more to produce each cent than the coin is worth for many years, leading to ongoing debates about whether the penny should even continue to exist. That means coins like the 2006 D-penny could someday represent the final decades of the Lincoln cent era, making them historically important, even if they're not all rare. Another fun fact: while most people assume pennies are made of copper, your 2006 D-penny is actually mostly zinc. The copper you see is just a thin outer layer. If the coin gets damaged or scratched deeply, you might see the silvery gray zinc underneath. Also, if you stack 145 pennies, they weigh about 1 pound. And if you laid every 2006 D-penny ever made edge to edge, they would wrap around the earth multiple times. Collectors also love this coin because it's accessible. You don't need thousands of dollars to start collecting modern Lincoln cents. Many people enjoy building complete date and mint collections, searching rolls from banks, or sorting through jars of change. The thrill of possibly finding a high-grade example or rare error makes even everyday coins exciting. And unlike ancient or gold coins, Lincoln cents tell a story of daily American life. They've passed through millions of hands: grocery stores, school lunches, toll booths, gas stations, tip jars, quietly witnessing decades of everyday moments. For collectors, the 2006 D-penny represents more than just metal. It represents the craftsmanship of modern minting, the closing chapter of the Lincoln Memorial reverse design, and the idea that something small and overlooked can still hold unexpected value. It also teaches an important lesson in coin collecting. Rarity doesn't always mean old. Sometimes rarity means condition, sometimes it means mistakes, and sometimes it means being the right coin from the right place at the right moment. So the next time you find a penny in your pocket, take a second look. Check the date. Look for that tiny D tilted in the light. You might be holding something that's worth more than you ever expected, not just in dollars, but in history. Because the 2006 D Lincoln penny isn't just spare change. It's a snapshot of American money at the turn of the 21st century. It's part of a design legacy that spanned generations. And in rare cases, it's a hidden collectible waiting to be discovered. And who knows, the next time you empty your pockets, that small brown coin you almost ignore could turn out to be something special. And sometimes, that's where the best stories begin. Most people walk past this coin every day without a second glance. But what if I told you a simple brown penny from 2007, one that may be sitting quietly in your pocket or change jar, could hold a story far bigger than its 1-cent face value? Today, we're uncovering the surprising truth behind the 2007 D Lincoln penny, and why collectors still search for this modern coin years after it left circulation. The coin we're talking about today is the 2007 Lincoln cent with the D Mint mark, meaning it was struck at the Denver Mint. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary penny, Abraham Lincoln on the front, the Lincoln Memorial on the back, nothing flashy, nothing rare-looking. But behind this everyday design is a piece of American history, a snapshot of the economy, the Mint's production choices, and even hidden collector opportunities most people never notice. In 2007, the United States Mint was still producing Lincoln pennies in massive numbers. The Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for nearly 100 years, making it the longest-running design in U.S. coin history. That year, Americans were using cash more than digital payments, and pennies were still considered essential for daily transactions. The Denver Mint alone produced more than 4 billion Lincoln cents in 2007, one of the highest outputs of the entire decade. So why were so many made? The answer is simple: demand. Vending machines, cash registers, and everyday commerce relied heavily on small coins. Even though inflation had already reduced the penny's purchasing power, the government still needed enormous quantities to keep the economy running smoothly. The 2007 D penny became part of that system, moving from minting presses to pockets, piggy banks, and cash drawers across the country. But the year 2007 is especially interesting because it represents the final stretch of the classic Lincoln Memorial reverse design before everything changed. Just 2 years later, in 2009, the Mint would redesign the penny's reverse to celebrate Lincoln's 200th birthday. That makes the 2007 D penny one of the last traditional Lincoln cents, closing out nearly 5 decades of memorial-backed pennies. Now let's take a closer look at the coin itself. On the front, or obverse, you'll see Abraham Lincoln's profile facing right. This portrait has been used since 1909 and is one of the most recognizable images in American coinage. Above his head is the word liberty, and in front of his face is the phrase, "In God we trust." Beneath his shoulder, you'll find the date, 2007, and just to the right of it, a small D mint mark showing that the coin was made in Denver. On the reverse or back, you'll see the Lincoln Memorial, complete with tiny columns, and if you look closely enough, even a small seated Lincoln statue between them. Along the top edge are the words United States of America, and along the bottom is 1 cent. Above the memorial is the phrase E pluribus unum, meaning out of many, one. The metal composition of the 2007 D penny is another important detail. Unlike older pennies made mostly of copper, this coin is primarily zinc, with a thin copper coating on the outside. It weighs about 2.5 grams and measures 19 millimeters across. This change in metal began in 1982, when rising copper prices made it too expensive to produce solid copper pennies. By 2007, zinc-based cents were standard, even though many people still think of pennies as copper coins. Now here's where things get interesting. Most 2007 D pennies are only worth face value 1 cent if they're worn or heavily circulated. But collectors aren't just looking for any example. They're looking for condition, errors, and unusual features that make a coin stand out from the billions that were made. In mint condition, meaning the coin was never circulated and shows no wear, a 2007 D penny can sell for several dollars, especially if it has strong luster, sharp details, and clean surfaces. Coins graded M-67 or higher by professional grading services have sold for anywhere from $20 to over $100, depending on demand and timing. That might not sound life-changing, but for a coin that once bought almost nothing and today costs more than a penny to make, that's still an impressive return. But condition isn't the only factor. Errors are where collectors really start paying attention. Some 2007 D pennies were struck with off-center designs, where part of the image is missing and blank metal shows on one side. Others were double-struck, creating overlapping designs that look distorted or shadowed. There are also examples with die cracks, thin raised lines caused by cracks in the minting dies, and grease-filled dies that leave parts of the design weak or missing. One of the most desirable types of errors is the doubled die. This happens when the coin die receives a misaligned impression during production, causing doubling in letters or numbers. On some 2007 D pennies, collectors have found doubling in the words liberty, in God we trust, or the date itself. These errors can sell for anywhere from $25 to several $100s, depending on how strong and clear the doubling is. In rare cases, off-metal errors have been discovered, pennies struck on the wrong type of blank, such as dime planchets or foreign coin blanks. These are extremely scarce and can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, especially if authenticated by a grading service. One verified example of a high-grade 2007 D Lincoln cent graded M-68 sold at auction for over $300, simply because of its near-perfect condition. Another error example, a strong off-center strike, sold for more than $150, even though the coin itself was less than 2 decades old. These sales show that modern coins can still become valuable if they're unusual enough or preserved well enough. So how do you know if the 2007 D penny in your hand is real, valuable, or just another piece of pocket change? First, look for the mint mark. A real 2007 D penny will have a small D just below the date on the front of the coin. If there's no mint mark, it was made in Philadelphia. That doesn't make it fake, just different. Next, check the weight. A standard 2007 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. A digital scale can help confirm this. A significantly heavier or lighter coin could be damaged, altered, or possibly struck on the wrong metal, which could increase its value. Then examine the details. Look closely at Lincoln's face, the lettering, and the date. Are the letters sharp and clean or blurry and weak? Do any letters appear doubled? Is the coin centered properly, or does part of the design run off the edge? Use a magnifying glass or phone camera to inspect small details. Also look at the edges. The penny should have a smooth edge, not ridged or reeded. Any unusual shape, thickness, or texture could be a sign of an error or alteration. Finally, be cautious of altered coins. Some people artificially damage pennies to make them look like errors, hoping to sell them as rare. Real mint errors usually show smooth metal flow and natural striking patterns, not scratches, cuts, or file marks. Now let's talk about something surprising. Even though billions of 2007 D pennies were made, very few survive in perfect condition. Most were quickly circulated, stacked in rolls, dropped on sidewalks, or stored in jars where they rubbed against other coins. That friction causes tiny scratches and dulling that lowers their grade. As a result, true gem quality examples, especially M-67 or M-68, are genuinely scarce, even though the coin itself is common. Another interesting fact is that the 2007 penny was made during a time when the U.S. government was losing money on every cent produced. The cost of zinc, copper plating, labor, and transportation had risen so much that each penny cost more than 1 cent to make. This sparked national debates about eliminating the penny altogether, debates that continue today. Yet, despite that controversy, the mint kept producing pennies, and the 2007 D Lincoln cent became part of the final years of traditional 1-cent circulation before major design changes reshaped the series. Collectors love this coin not because it's ancient or made of precious metal, but because it represents a moment in modern American history, the closing chapter of a design era that began in 1959 and lasted nearly half a century. It's also a favorite among beginner collectors because it's easy to find, affordable, and perfect for learning how grading, errors, and mint marks work. For seasoned collectors, high-grade examples and rare errors provide exciting challenges. Searching through rolls of pennies for doubled dies or off-center strikes becomes a modern treasure hunt, one that doesn't require expensive equipment or deep historical knowledge, just patience, curiosity, and a sharp eye. Some collectors even build complete Dayton mint sets of Lincoln cents, where the 2007 D is an essential piece. Others focus exclusively on errors, hoping to uncover the next overlooked variety that could skyrocket in value once properly documented. There's also a nostalgic side to this coin. For many people, 2007 doesn't feel that long ago. It was a time before smartphones dominated daily life, before contactless payments became normal, and before many people stopped carrying cash altogether. Holding a 2007 penny today can feel like holding a piece of recent history, a reminder of how quickly everyday life changes. And here's one more surprising detail. Some early 2007 pennies were struck using slightly different die styles than later ones, creating subtle design variations in the lettering and spacing. These minor differences aren't widely known, but specialists continue studying them, hoping to identify new collectible varieties. That means the full story of the 2007 D penny may not even be finished yet. So is the 2007 D Lincoln penny rare? In general circulation, no, it's one of the most common modern cents. But in high grades with strong mint luster and no marks, it becomes surprisingly scarce. Add a genuine mint error, and suddenly a 1-cent coin becomes a serious collectible worth far more than its face value. And that's what makes this coin fascinating. It teaches us that rarity isn't always about age. Value isn't always about gold or silver. Sometimes it's about condition, mistakes, timing, and how many people bothered to save something before it disappeared into daily use. The next time you receive change, take a second look at your pennies. That small copper-colored coin with a 2007 date and a tiny D mint mark might not seem special at first. But in the world of coin collecting, even ordinary objects can hold extraordinary stories, and sometimes unexpected value. Because in numismatics, the most exciting treasures aren't always buried in the past. Sometimes they're hiding right in your pocket. And if you're curious about what other everyday coins might be worth more than you think, you're just getting started.